1945, and when Einstein said, you know, this changes everything in the world except how men think. So I want a president that has that same filter, that all of these other things are important, but protecting the country and reducing the chance of successful use of weapons of mass destruction against us is the #1 job. And I think most of the presidents, I've talked to a couple of them about it over the years, and I really think that they do realize that they may get lost in the events of every day as they go along. And then beyond that, I want a president that has two objectives with the economy. One is to make sure that this marvelous goose we have keeps laying more golden eggs. And then I want a president that also feels that if GDP is $60,000 per capita in the United States, that nobody should get left behind. We've got a market system that works marvelously in turning out more goods and services, better ones, year after year. Done it all through my life.
Would you ever talk to a candidate and say, hey, what do you think about these three things?
Well, they'll tell me what I want to hear in most cases. So I want to hear what they tell people who disagree with them on the subject. I always like to ask a candidate, they usually finesse me some way or another, but I say, what are you for that the majority of your followers are against? You know, I know you really believe in that, you know, and that's really the test, but I'm not sure that, except under some kind of sodium pentothal or something, you're going to get a great answer to that question.
That's great, but that's the question you ask the presidential candidates or presidents that you would speak to.
If I really want to get, and that's why Bernie Sanders was so successful. I mean, 90% of the people who voted for Bernie Sanders had probably not heard of him 2 years earlier, but they felt they knew exactly what he would do. I mean, they felt he was authentic. And if you asked him, you know, what he was for that most people might be against, he would tell you, you know.
A few questions about Kraft Heinz. Was that a mistake?
Well, we'll find out over time, but we did pay too much, in my view, for Kraft. We didn't pay too much for Heinz. So when we started out, it was originally a non-public partnership between us, but we did pay too much, in my view, for Kraft. And there's not much you can do about things if you pay too much. Secondly, there's always been a struggle between the retailer and brands. I mean, if I've got a terribly weak brand and I want to get into Walmart, I'm not going to be able to do it. You know, I mean, I have to offer all kinds of crazy concessions, you know, and I want to be in Walmart if I have some sort of consumer packaged goods. The negotiation is way different if you have something essential versus non-essential. 10 years ago, Costco tried to get rid of Coca-Cola. Costco's got terrific loyalty among customers, and you know, and their own Kirkland brand is a $39 billion brand now, and it moves from category to category, and they only started in 1992. So they know brands, but in the end, they put Coca-Cola back in. If it had been Royal Crown Cola, they wouldn't have had to put it back in. So there's always that struggle between the brands. I mean, and there always will be. But the retailers net, it has been moving in their direction, particularly, I think, because of the Amazon revolution.
First Walmart, and then
Walmart.
Right, and then
Walmart,
Amazon.
yeah. I mean, but it's been accentuated. I think we have a new retailing environment now. I mean, it isn't like it goes from night to day, but it moves somewhat, and brands that people have spent billions of dollars developing and sponsoring TV shows or sponsoring radio shows in the old days. I mean, Campbell Soup was always on there with Jack Benny or something, you know, when I was a kid, and it was big. And it built brands, and people obviously like the product too, but people are more willing to change, and it's harder. It's a somewhat different world than what it is night and day. I mean, you are very unlikely to keep changing brands every day. But it really surprised me that Gillette lost position. I mean, men don't like to experiment much. Women are better experimenting. But you know, when you were a kid, the Gillette cavalcade of sports was your pal and brought you the Rose Bowl and the World Series and all that sort of thing. You just shave with Gillette the rest of your life, and you still do to a great degree, but it's not exactly the same as it was even 5 years ago or so when we bought Kraft.
You mentioned Amazon as a game changer, and I have to ask you, you haven't bought the stock. You're an admirer of Jeff Bezos. A listing of the richest people in America came out. He's number one. I think your friend Bill Gates is number two. You're number three. So you can see what he's done in myriad ways.
Yeah.
And of course, the question is, how come you haven't bought Amazon? Is there still time to buy it? Would you still buy it?
Oh, I always admired Jeff. I mean, I met him 20 years ago or so, and I thought he was something special, but I didn't realize you could go from books to what's happened there. No, I mean, he had a vision and executed in an incredible way, something that it would not have, but there's a lot of games I miss. I would have missed, I would have missed Microsoft even if I gotten to know Bill earlier or something. Those just aren't my games. I don't worry about the things that I miss that are outside my circle of competence of evaluating. I have missed things that were within my circle, and that's a terrible mistake. Those are my biggest mistakes. You haven't seen them. But I don't, it's not a mistake because I miss Netscape or something like that at all. I would say that maybe 5% of the companies or 10% of the companies at most are within an area of my circle of competence. There's something I should be able to understand.
All right, well, let me switch gears then and ask you about leverage a little bit. And corporate debt, people are concerned about. People are concerned about federal debt at $22 trillion. Should we reduce, let's just say, the federal debt, and how would we do that?
Well, if you're running a deficit getting close to 5% when things are really good, that's a new world. And neither the Republicans or Democrats are particularly concerned about it. And we're not having a lot of inflation. That wasn't supposed to happen, but it's happening. That's why I say you don't want to get hung up on trying to make economic analysis because nobody's any good at it. You don't get rich doing that. If you look at, you mentioned that Forbes list, if you get on the list, the number of people have done that by economic analysis, I think you're just about zilch on there.
Okay, fair enough. Income inequality, wealth inequality, you've talked about the earned income tax credit. Is there more to it than that? Should we adjust tax policy? It seems to be going the other way right now.
Well, it is going the other way, but I think the earned income tax credit is the best way to put money in the pockets of people that don't fit well into the market system, but that are perfectly decent citizens and that have made a good bit of the success somebody like I've had with Berkshire or something possible. It wouldn't have happened without the America we have. And if you go back 200 years and we're all working on, 80% of us are working on farms. The person that's the best at that, working on that farm, whatever it may be, is worth maybe twice the ones that's the worst. I mean, that's the difference between super talent and no talent in the farm economy, picking cotton or whatever it may be. Now, if you're the best middleweight fighter in the world, you may get $20 or $30 million. And if you are just a good citizen, raise nice kids, help in the neighborhood and everything else, but you don't have market-related skills, you'd be good on that farm still. And you would be earning something comparable to most of the people around you. But you don't have something now that as it gets more and more specialized, and it's going to continue to get more specialized. You want two things for that person. You want them to have a decent life. I mean, they live in a country with 60,000 of GDP per person. You want them to have a decent life, and they can. I also think you want them to have a feeling of accomplishment. So you want them to have a job, assuming that they're not handicapped in some way. You want them to have a job. But the minimum wage would be one way to say, well, we'll make sure that they have enough money in their pocket. But that's got a lot of effects in disturbing the market system. They just need more cash. They don't need a higher wage. They need more cash in their pocket. And the government, at a relatively low cost, can provide a decent living for anybody that's working 40 hours a week and has a couple of children. And we've gone in that direction, and it's sort of bipartisan. I mean, you find both Republicans and Democrats for it. I think it would be better not to have one annual payment, that they get it monthly. And I think there's various things you could do, but you want them to feel part of the system, and you want to have them get as more and more of these golden eggs are laid, you want them to get a little more of their share.
I mean, if we don't do that and the Democrats win, it's possible we get, big taxes on wealthy people, free college for all, and those are bigger plans.
You want more money in the pockets of everybody that's willing to work or is unable to work. And we can do it. A rich family would do that. If I had 6 or 7 kids and I had some business I wanted to pass on, you'd pick the most able person to run it because that's the market system to do that. But you'd make sure that all 7 of the family participated. You'd give more to the one that you might give more to the one that kept producing the golden eggs. You would, but you wouldn't just say to the one at the lowest end, who might be the best kid of all in most respects. He's the one that shares with everybody and does all kinds of things. And you wouldn't say to him or her that too bad, but that's just the way the market system works. That, go have your spouse get a job and look for housing someplace.
Right. Why don't we do an update about the healthcare initiative, which now the company has a name.
Yeah,
Haven. Was that your idea?
No.
Sometimes
no, I didn't worry about a name. We could have gone on as a no-name operation for 10 years, as far as I'm concerned. No, that is. We got a wonderful partnership in the sense that it's large and has reasonable market muscle with more than 1 million employees among the 3 of us. We've got 3 CEOs that can make things get done in organizations that are so big that normally they would get very bureaucratic. If you tried to do this with many big companies, you'd have legal weighing in and public relations weighing in. We don't have any of that stuff. They may have them in certain areas, but I don't have to. But Jamie isn't going to worry about doing that sort of thing, and neither is Jeff. So we've got a unity of commitment and an ability to execute on the commitment. The only problem is you've got a $3.4 trillion industry, which is as much as the federal government raises every year, that basically feels pretty good about the system. As we went around talking to people to find a leader for the group, for example, everybody says, the system, it turns out very good medicine, but you can't go from 5% of GDP to 18, without really making you less competitive, among other things in the world. So everybody thought the system needed some adjustment, just not their part of the system. And that's very human. I do the same thing, I'm sure, if I was in the same place. So there's an enormous resistance to change, while a similar acknowledgement that change will be needed. And of course, if the private sector doesn't supply that over a period of time, people will say then, we give up, we got to turn this over to government, which will probably be even worse.
How often do you talk to Jamie and Jeff about it? I know Todd Combs, I think, is your point person.
Todd really does all the work at ARPA. If this works, give Todd 100% of the credit from the Berkshire standpoint.
Does Haven have to buy companies to gain expertise? And what do you?
No, no, I don't.
What is the plan? I mean, how do you?
The plan is to support a very, very, very good thinker on this subject is a practicing physician and who commands the respect of the medical community to, in effect, figure out some way so that we can deliver even better care and have people feel better about their care too. I mean, they have to perceive that they're receiving better care over time and stop the march upward of cost relative to the country's output. We've got this incredible economic machine, but we shouldn't be spending 18% when other countries are doing something pretty comparable in terms of doctors per capita, hospital beds per capita, and all that. the very top stuff in medicine, I think, is very much concentrated in this country, and that's great. I want us to be the leader, but I just don't, I think we're paying a price. If we're paying 7 extra points of GDP